What really happened with the Dallas Mavericks this season? We will break down our autopsy of the 2024-25 Mavericks. Coming up next on the DLLS Mavs podcast. Hey, what's up, DLLS Mavs Nation? It's your man, Kevin Gray, alongside Mavericks beat writer Tim Cato, Mavericks analyst Bobby Corella. Of course, we are DLLS Mavs. Appreciate you joining us here on this Friday afternoon here on DLLS Sports. What really happened with the Dallas Mavericks season? We will go through our season autopsy. Today's episode, boys and girls, not for the faint of heart, as we will break down piece by piece what happened this season to your Dallas Mavericks. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to DLLS Sports. And gentlemen, welcome to a fantastic Friday right here on DLLS. How are we feeling today?
Feeling great. Bring in the juice. We're ready.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Oh, you're so ready.
We're ready.
Oh, my God.
Respect.
Bobby has never been more ready.
Give me the scalpel. Let's slice this corpse open.
Okay.
Wow, already.
Not violating TOS. That is a metaphor.
That is very true. Shout out to our guy Bobby Corella, because he is working on little sleep after he spent all night last night hanging out with our DLLS Cowboys crew.
KG, so did you.
No, I went to bed right after I appeared on the show last night. So you were up, smashing fireball, all kinds of stuff last night with our
regrettably
with our DLLS Cowboys crew, who did a fantastic job last night. Night one of the NFL draft, the Cowboys drafted Tyler Booker out of Alabama as their first overall pick this year at number 12. So congratulations to the Cowboys and Tyler Booker, the newest member of the Cowboys.
Look, every Dallas team needs guards right now.
That is good call.
So
good
true.
call. The Wings got Paige Beckers. The Cowboys got Tyler Booker.
Miro coming back. That's kind of like a guard in hockey.
Kind of, yeah. And, of course, Stars up 2-1 in their
Well,
best
hockey
seven.
players just need guards.
They do like shin guards,
like
face
mouth
guards.
guards,
Yeah.
I think
all,
so.
all kinds of
I
stuff.
think this
Getting hit
works.
in the face.
So our DLLS crew is absolutely cooking. Best Stars podcast in the game, best Cowboys podcast in the game. Rangers blew it last night, but we still got the best Rangers podcast in the game as well.
Easy for you to say.
Easy for me to say. That's why I'm not going to do a lot of talking today. No, I'm just joking. Let's get into it. Bobby's got his scalpel and ready to dissect what was the most controversial and most unpredictable season in the 40-plus year history of the Dallas Mavericks. We'll get into all of it when it comes to the trade, Jason Kidd, a little bit later on in the show. But, gentlemen, let's kind of just start at the beginning of the season as we kind of break down what happened this year, not just in the context of the trade of getting Anthony Davis, moving on from Luka Doncic, but also how this season wound up ultimately going. And we started, honestly, gentlemen, and Tim, we started in training camp where injuries really kind of, unfortunately, began to set the tone for this season, whether it be Luka Doncic, whether it be Dante Exum. Injuries really started to kind of set the tone where the season began.
Yeah, Dallas started the year out in training camp. They did it out in Vegas, and just immediately Luka Doncic is hurt, and the season goes from there. He's available for the opening game, but Dallas gets a win over San Antonio. But it just doesn't. There's a lot of nothing quite looks right to start the year. I think what you said, Bobby, kind of. I'm gonna let you re-say it rather than stealing your words. But
they just didn't really seem ready to play. They didn't seem ready to go. We heard that like during the Rick era, when Rick Carlisle was the head coach, he would often say after a loss where they got smacked around in the first half, he'd always say, "We weren't ready to play, and that was my fault." And 92% of the time, whenever he said that, he was lying. It wasn't his fault. It was the player's fault. This season, kind of hard to assess the blame, to assess who's at fault for that, because reportedly Luka wasn't totally ready to go after that calf injury. Tim McMahon reported that he might have gained some weight, and we were watching him at the beginning of the year, and we were like, he doesn't look like Luka. But Kyrie spent all season with a hand injury, so he barely played basketball. And Dante Exum got hurt right away, first day of training camp. He's out. And Gafford was starting the season, and he was brutal to start the year. Derek Lively was coming off the bench, and he didn't look that much better. He was great until he got put in the starting lineup, but then he got hurt. So, no one was really ready to go. I remember talking about Clay after that Grizzlies game in early December, whenever the Mavs finally got it going. And up to that point, that's a month and a half into the season, and a lot of Mavs fans in our chat were thinking, is Clay just like turbo washed? Like, what's going on? Just nothing was clicking for them. Quentin Grimes catching DNPs, and Najee Marshall was barely playing at all. Like, these new additions were not really factored in, and they weren't up to speed. And it seemed like, okay, like, does this team have a coach? Is J Kidd what's going on there? And I think in the back half of the year, J Kidd really shined. But if you do want to point to anybody, I guess it is maybe the coach. I don't know, but every player had kind of had their own asterisk. This really did kind of seem like a season of asterisks.
Yeah, Najee played under 20 minutes, averaged under 20 minutes his first 6 games. Quentin Grimes averaged just 12 minutes his first 9 games. That led into that DNP that you referenced that everybody remembers from earlier in the season, or maybe you don't remember that because it feels like eons have been between that. I think that was a play-in tournament game. I think that had a weird court. And Quentin Grimes didn't play in that.
Maybe he refused to play on that court. It was awful. Horrible court.
I think that it's not the court's fault. The way it was born, the way it was made.
Wow.
I think that you shouldn't put so much judgment on upon that court. But these are the 2 big additions, and yeah, they were not at their best, and the team just kind of plodded along. Like you mentioned, Derek Lively didn't start the year, or wasn't starting to start the year. And there's a huge difference between Dallas when Derek Lively was on the court and Daniel Gafford. But even then, what Daniel Gafford did so well later in the year as kind of like a, somebody that they turned to, sometimes out of necessity, but as a guy they could throw the ball into and get paint points, that didn't really come along for a while. So it was just, everything was so messy. There's those 4 losses all in a row. And, there was everything's going to get right. Everything's going to get righted in the Utah game. And that was
ring the effing bell.
Yeah. He's not going to ring
he's just not going to do it.
It's too late. The moment passed.
I was doing the other thing.
He literally took a bite of a granola bar instead of ringing the bell.
He said, "Get that damn bell, okay?"
Tanner, you have one job back there. It's to ring the bell.
You're the bell guy.
As far as I don't know what else. There's got to be something else. But as far as I know, you ring the bell.
You see all that
every
stuff
time we
back
mention
there?
Utah.
He's got more than just one job ringing that bell back there.
But that game, we said it at the time, man. That Utah game was such a microcosm of all of their issues because it was defensive ineptitude in critical moments of the game. The offense was clunky. A couple really important guys kind of no-showed that game. And it was the culmination of all of these flaws that immediately got rectified. And we'll talk about the good real quick, but one last bad thing, KG. Through the first 12 games of the season, which ended with that Utah loss, 7 of those games were counted as clutch games, scores within 5 points inside the final 5 minutes. The Mavs in the previous season in 23-24, they were clutch gods. They were the lords of the fourth quarter. Kyrie, obviously the king of the fourth, and he and Luka were taking turns just breaking hearts and all that stuff, especially down the stretch of the year. But during those first 12 games, those first 7 clutch games, they were just 1-6 in the clutch. And in clutch minutes, their defensive rating was 132, which is an unholy bad number. Their offensive rating was only 111, which isn't really that much better. They were a terrible, terrible clutch team, and all those games are coin flips.
Yeah.
And if you lose that many coin flips due to miscommunication or missed free throws or taking another ill-advised three-pointer from the left wing whenever you maybe could have settled for something, you could have got something better. Those losses add up, and morale was low, and their ranking in the standings was even lower.
Yeah, a team that was 5-7 through 12 games, as Tim mentioned, went on a 4-game losing streak. But then all of a sudden, this team began to turn it around. In fact, turned it around so much so they ripped off 14 of 17 and climbed themselves all the way to 4th in the Western Conference at a 19-10 record. And during that time, we're thinking not only is the defense getting better, they're getting contributions from a number of different guys. Luka starts to play himself into the kind of shape that we thought coming into the season that he was going to be ready to play with. And this is a team that we thought, this is the team that beat 350-win teams on the way to the NBA Finals, a team that started to gel and figure out, okay, the regular season is here now, and now we look at them as a true Western Conference contender once again. So by the time you get to what is December the 23rd, they beat up on the Portland Trailblazers 132-108, where Doncic had 27 points to lead a victory that day, and they're 19-10, and we're thinking, all right, it's about to be Christmas Day, and you're getting ready for a showdown with Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves, and this team is exactly where they need to be as they get ready for a lot of folks what is the quote-unquote start of the season, given obviously the NFL and everything else. But they were right where they thought we were going to be when they got to that point of the season there.
Yeah, I mean, the big difference over those 17 games is that, after second game of the year, he was a DMP. Spencer Dinwiddie got in the rotation, and it changed. I can't even do that one seriously.
He was good.
He was good.
Yeah. It is absolutely bonkers, and I'm jumping way ahead to the end of the year. It's bonkers that the second game of the season, Spencer Dinwiddie, DMP, coach's decision. Second to last game of the regular season, I believe he was ruled out, but essentially Spencer Dinwiddie, DMP, coach's decision. Between those two,
you're not going to believe
those
what
two marks, you are never going to believe what happened.
So they win 14 out of 17. During that run, they beat OKC at OKC.
Mm-hmm.
They beat Denver at Denver. They crushed the Knicks without Luka. And I think Kyrie might not have even played that game. They had that dramatic comeback win against the Grizzlies. They go to Golden State and play one of the most entertaining games I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, my gosh.
They beat the Clippers. They were just, they were riding so high. During that stretch, they had the best win percentage in the league. They had the 5th best net rating in the league. And we were sitting on this show after that December 23rd win thinking, like, I think the opening of that postgame was, the Mavs are good. Deal with it. Just get over it. Like, it's done. The Mavs are one of the, if not the best team in the NBA. They're probably going to win the West again. They're going to go back to the finals, and they're probably going to win the finals.
The vibes were so high.
Boston doesn't seem like they're as good as last year.
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland hadn't become like, oh my God, good yet. It was the Mavs league. They were running the league.
Yeah, it was really, it wasn't just the Mavs are good, deal with it. It's we were right. Deal with it.
Yes, we were right. Yes, exactly.
Because they hadn't looked like the team that we said they were going to be. I remember, people were like, DLLS, you hyped the team up too much. How dare you do this?
Well, they're
not as good as you said they would be.
They also said we hyped up the Thunder too much, and look at them now.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So I do remember that, and again, I'm not putting too much into any individual comment or anything, but we said this team was going to be awesome. We said they were going to be very good at basketball when they're healthy, when they were clicking, and they were clicking. They finally were healthy-ish. They hadn't even been like fully healthy in that stretch, but they were finally clicking. They were finally showing that they were the team that we had been describing in the entire lead up to the regular season. The team that we thought they were going to be. And then it went downhill.
Oh my God.
A little bit, and then a lot bit, and then a little bit.
A whole lot of bit.
A whole lot bit, yeah.
I mean, real quick, because we'll touch on that in the coming up in the next segment, but I mean, you mentioned a couple of those wins in there. One of my favorite wins of the season, that NBA Cup game against the Memphis Grizzlies, where Spencer Dinwiddie, in fact, like the crowd was just so electric inside the American Airlines Center, and you were just watching on television. You could feel how much the Mavericks wanted to win that particular game, and the way that they played down the stretch. PJ Washington was big in that game as well. Like that, to me, one of the early regular season wins that really stood out. That in the Golden State game, in which Luka just went berserk on the Golden State Warriors. And if I remember correctly, I believe both of those teams that came off of like 2 or 3 days worth of rest going into that game. I know the
Mavs hadn't played in 5 days leading up to that game.
Yeah. So, and the basketball, the shooting in that game was absolutely incredible.
And that Memphis game, it wasn't a new feeling. Dallas just inevitably coming back and winning that game. It was a continuation of what Dallas did down the stretch of last regular season.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a carbon copy of that Rockets game. I don't think they were down by as many points, but they were down a lot late. But you saw how together they were. You saw how confident they were.
Yeah.
You saw whenever they won, dude, they were popping off on the court. Like, it was an unbelievable environment in that building, like you said. Vibes all-time high. Could not possibly get any better than that. The very next game, they beat the absolute brakes off of the Wizards. They go beat the Raptors. Like, this team is full of a bunch of badasses. What could possibly bring them down?
If only what we knew was coming on the other side, which we will do on the other side of this break here on the DLLS Mavs podcast as we continue our season autopsy of the Dallas Mavericks. we get to Christmas Day where everything changed for this Dallas Mavericks team. We'll get into it next here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. But it's that time of the year again where property taxes are due, and Ownwell wants to help you take care of it. Owning a home can be challenging. I own one as well, and I got that letter in the mail letting me know what I need to take care of in terms of my property tax. But I didn't have any concerns because I knew Ownwell was going to help me take care of it. They believe that when it comes to paying property tax, you should only pay what's fair. With Ownwell, it handle everything from start to finish with delivering top results with no upfront costs, so you only pay if you save. In fact, 86% of Ownwell's customers receive a reduction with an average customer savings of over $1,100. That's some serious scratch at this time of the year. So put property tax money back in your pocket in just minutes with Ownwell. Remember, the deadline to protest is May 15th in most counties here in Texas. Save money on your property taxes with Ownwell. Sign up in less than 3 minutes and start your protest today at ownwell.com/DLLS. That's OWNWELL.com/DLLS today.
Get ready for the summer ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. I love Shady Rays because I love walking around in the summer to the office or, just in around and about. And sometimes you're out and you put the sunglasses down and, who knows what happened to them? Nobody knows.
They grow a pair of legs. They scurry away.
Exactly. And that's why I love Shady Rays, because every pair is backed by a lost or broken replacements. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code DLLS for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
As we continue here on the DLLS Mavs podcast, we go through our season autopsy of the 2024-25 season for your Dallas Mavericks. In our first segment, we covered the beginning of the season leading all the way up to Christmas Day, where the Mavericks had put themselves in position with a 19-10 record, 4th in the Western Conference at that point, looking like an absolute juggernaut, having won 14 of 17 games, gentlemen. That's where we get to Christmas Day. As we mentioned, the Mavericks had really started to put themselves in a terrific position, looking like one of the best teams, not just in the West, but in the NBA, but getting ready to turn the calendar from 2024 to 25, what that meant in going forward for this team. And all of a sudden, the Minnesota Timberwolves come in on one of the most anticipated showdowns of the early portion of the NBA schedule. Of course, a rematch of the Western Conference Finals after the Mavericks had taken them out to reach the finals for the first time since 2011. All things changed that particular day because number 77 suffered what would be his 4th calf strain in over 20 months. And all of a sudden, things changed for good.
Yeah, not a very good Christmas gift to the Mavericks or to Luka. And yeah, it's you wonder, of course you wonder. Don't think, Nico himself said it, and my best understanding is this is the case. Like, there was no breaking of, there's no straw that what are these analogies? The straw that broke the camel's back, but there's like 3 of them, right?
It was also the last straw.
The last straw.
And he drew the short straw.
Okay.
It's definitely not the straw that stirred the drink, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No.
I just think that I think it's really mean to the camel. Like, don't put that straw on there. It's a living being.
Yeah, what are we doing?
Yeah, there should be let's put some structure in place. Don't max out your camel. You only got one camel.
The vibes in that game were really off from the start, though. Like, it felt weird. It felt really weird. Luka gets hurt in the middle of the first half. The Wolves led by as much as 25 or almost 30 in that game, I think.
Yeah, they were by no means winning that game even if Luka hadn't got hurt.
No, it was awful. Now the Mavs made a big comeback and almost won.
Massive comeback.
But it just felt weird. And it felt even weirder because it came on the heels of an incredible run of basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this team was peaking. They looked like world beaters. And then it just seemed like, I don't want to ascribe too much, to think about what Luka's feeling or whatever, but it just seemed like Luka didn't really want to be out there. And then he got hurt, and I'm like, okay, maybe he's been hurt the whole game. Like, maybe he hasn't felt right since tip-off. But that goes back to us having the same conversation over and over again. If he hadn't been healthy in 2 years.
Yeah.
So it just was this continuation of this calf thing, and we're thinking like, dude, is this the one that's finally, is this the straw that broke the camel's back? Is this when he's finally going to be out for a while? Because Tim, you said as he was leaving the floor, that was it looked like the most unhappy he's ever been, or in the most pain that he's ever been.
So as I put myself back in that mindset, it is really funny.
It better be funny.
Okay, it's not very funny how pessimistic a lot of us were in that moment. We didn't realize that bleak future and pessimism would only be doubled or tripled.
Oh my God.
But it wasn't a good feeling to be honest and open about where the Mavericks were headed. I remember texting you or, certainly talking to people that Dallas had this was when Kyrie had the back injury. I'm speeding ahead a little bit. But I remember telling people they have the 3 worst combinations of injuries. They have a small guard with back problems. They have a big athlete who relies on deceleration, who has recurring calf issues. And look, it's stuff that he couldn't kick for 2 years. And then I'm also jumping ahead to Derek Lively, but they had a young center, a 7'1" guy with leg concerns, lower leg injuries.
Yeah, man.
We were also looking at this point. I think Klay Thompson was ultimately a fine signing, but we were looking at Klay Thompson and we were wondering, were we sure this was the right piece? And there was, I remember asking privately, because at this point it was way too soon to come to a definite conclusion about it. But Klay Thompson maybe shouldn't have been starting with that group. And you probably couldn't change that until the following summer or the following season. He was good as like a 20-minute guy, but once the minutes got up to 30, you really were missing point of attack defense.
This was becoming the Quentin Grimes podcast at the time.
We were, and we were all very sure that he was the more valuable player, even as it was very clear Jason Kidd was not trusting him to be that. But there was reasons for pessimism. There was reasons to think that Lively would struggle to be on the court at the right times. That Luka maybe was, headed towards maybe not a decline, but there was just concerns. There was overall concerns about his health, and there was concerns about Kyrie once that back injury popped up. Really seems like a story that just kind of went away. Hopefully for good for Kyrie. But there was a lot of concerns about the future of Dallas, and there's a lot of concerns about how much they had leveraged the future to create this exact team that had a very narrow window. Even though Luka gave you a longer window, yeah, it was like, are they going to beat Boston? But at this time, we still thought they were probably going to get back to the finals and lose against Boston.
Struggles in this, or forecasting.
The struggles were relative.
Forecasting those troubles in the postseason in December is fine.
Right.
Because, my take back in August and September was you only got Klay just to make the regular season easier.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you're going to pulverize bad teams. He's going to get hot. Then Luka will get hot the next night. Then Kyrie will get hot the next night. Then you'll get 35 lobs the next night. Like, it doesn't even matter. Figure out those problems whenever they become problems, But they decided to just encounter all their problems at once.
But we also thought, okay, that 31 pick is going to get moved, that the 25 pick is going to get moved.
Yeah, they'll shore it up. No worries.
Any available asset, even at the expense of Luka maybe, having a awful team and having to kind of rebuild around it, like 29-year-old Luka in the year, 2029? That was acceptable because this was as close as the team had got. Literally, they had just been to the finals. They were so close. So you go all in, even at the expense of the future, because Luka makes your future easier. And he paves over a lot of what you would have to give up in these scenarios. So it wasn't the OKC model of team building. Not everybody was on the same timelines. Not all of what you want in your cupboard in terms of draft picks and young players coming up, and just flexibility, ability to make more moves. They didn't have all that. But they had a chance, and they were very close, and it still felt like everything was going to be salvaged at some point this year.
During that span, they go and lose what is 6 of 7 games. They lose that game on Christmas Day. They actually come back and have an incredible win against the Phoenix Suns.
The punch game.
The Najee Marshall, Nusif Nurkic game. But then they go on to lose.
I said some regrettable things on that podcast.
Which one?
That was a fun show.
The Phoenix post-game show.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
But then they go to lose 5 straight games. They lose to Portland, Sacramento, Houston, Cleveland, and then at Memphis, getting blown out by 15 in that game. And then you guys mentioned Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes had a spectacular game against the Los Angeles Lakers, where he had what was 26-9 that night, and was able to lead them in a win. 23-9 that night. And then they beat Portland. So you're thinking, okay, maybe they're kind of righting the ship a little bit.
Oh, that Portland game was such a vibes game, too.
Mm-hmm.
That was the ice game, and everyone was out, and they still found a way to win.
Jaden Hardy had 25 that night. Derek Lively had 16 rebounds that night against the Portland Trailblazers. But then they lose 3 straight, 2 against Denver, and then against the New Orleans Pelicans in a 119-116 disappointing loss.
Goaltend gate.
That's right. That was the goaltend game.
You know what's really funny here? So what? Dallas finished the season 39-43, correct?
Mm-hmm.
They would have needed 6 more wins to get to about 45, which potentially could have had them as the 7th seed, playing the Houston Rockets in the first round. The Houston Rockets being maybe the only team that I think Dallas would have had a fighting chance against out of this West playoffs without Kyrie.
They had 48 wins. Golden State and Memphis both had 48.
Oh, 48.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very unlikely Dallas gets all the way there. There's certainly, you can look back through the season. You can comb through the results, keep all their injuries the same. You can comb through and find some games that easily could have flipped. You can find them early in the season. You can find them later in the season. It does make you think, like, if the team's really rolling, if the team's like, has 5 more wins from the first 2 months,
Mm-hmm.
it is the optics of trading Luka, but I still think that would have happened. But there's definitely some wins that they lost, and it might have made things, okay. I don't think there's any way they could have got up to the 7th seed to play Houston. The more I think about it, but there's a chance.
You think about some of the other ones that they had during that particular time. They beat OKC in the span of twice in a week, and they were able to get that done 106-98 on January 17th, the PJ Washington game. And then they do it again on the road against OKC on what was the 23rd of January, where they got another road win, and Spencer Dinwiddie is spectacular that night. And then you get toward the end of January, obviously, you lose at Boston by 15. Then you beat the brakes off the Wizards on the 27th. You beat the New Orleans Pelicans on the 29th. And then you lose 117-102.
Real quick, though, KG, there was a couple critical issues.
Yeah. Derek Lively is
in
one
Denver,
of them.
Derek Lively, or against Denver, Derek Lively gets hurt. Against Boston, Maxi Kleber gets hurt.
Yep.
And so now you're entering the no bigs. You go to Charlotte, Gafford plays great, but you blow that game.
Mm-hmm.
The goaltending game in New Orleans, like vibes, whereas they were at an all-time high, vibes are now like, oh my God, they cannot win a single game right now.
Yeah, Lively injuring himself on January the 22nd. We come to find out that he would miss 2 to 3 months with his own ankle stress fracture there, which was one of – I remember doing that emergency pod and thinking, oh, my gosh. Not only were the vibes not great, but where is this season going from a basketball guys letting you know about injury standpoint? Because that was just another injury that we thought maybe there's something going on here with this Mavericks team. And then, of course –
it's time to get Kyler Kelly in the mix.
That's – yeah. Oh, gosh, Kyler Kelly. He will live in infamy. And then, as I mentioned, January 31st, the Mavericks lose 117-102 on the road to the Detroit Pistons. Kyrie Irving that night.
Can I actually interrupt like 2 more things? Because we're about to enter the Luka, right? Essentially.
On the other side, yeah.
2 quick things. How many more wins do they have if they just ran a Quentin Grimes offense instead of a Spencer Dinwiddie offense for a lot of those games where they were just totally injured? A few more? Is that plausible? Or at least ran something more.
It's possible, yeah.
It's possible.
Someone said they have no resources to keep Grimes. He's a restricted free agent and full bird rights. They could have signed him to whatever they wanted this summer. They just predicted and decided at a very early point that what he was going to want next summer was more than they wanted to pay him. they had every resource to be able to keep him. Now, obviously, the more you sign him for, the more you push towards and possibly even past the second apron, depending on what you end up paying him. But they absolutely had every resource to keep Quentin Grimes if they wanted to keep Quentin Grimes. So just wanted to clarify that.
And that gets us to what would be on the other side of the break, the trade that changed everything for this franchise, as we continue with our season autopsy of the Dallas Mavericks coming up next on the DLLS Mavs podcast.
Timeline is a supplement that works with your cells to help give you more energy, feel stronger during workouts, and preserve health and mobility as you start to age. The patent ingredient is MitoPure, a postbiotic nutrient that clears our dysfunctional mitochondria, aka the powerhouse of your cells. I myself take Timeline, and with regular use, I'm starting to feel the difference in my energy levels. I feel a little spry. KG, I was here all night last night on the draft show.
You was cooking.
I still woke up, got out of bed feeling like $1,000,000. I exercise better on my walking mat over there. I recover faster. I feel more endurance and a whole lot more because MitoPure recharges my cells, and it'll recharge your cells and help your body's systems to work better. Right now, Timeline is giving you 10% off your order of MitoPure. Go to timeline.com/DLLS. Again, that's timeline.com/DLLS to get started today and get ready to be your best, most energized, and most revitalized you.
Barbecue and country music. What more Texas can it be than that? Lone Star Smokeout is coming to AT&T Stadium next weekend, May 2nd through the 4th. Try barbecue from 14 teams across the United States and decide for yourself who's really the champ when it comes to this barbecue game. Pair all that with events each day like Texas' biggest happy hour, Derby Day, and Cinco de Mayo a day earlier as well. Country's biggest stars like Cody Jinks, Joan Party, and Midland will all be performing as well during that star-studded weekend. So make sure that you continue to watch out here on DLLS for all upcoming information and VIP ticket giveaways for each day of the Smokeout as well. Remember, with kids 10 and under, they get in free in general admission. Tickets start at just $68. Don't miss out. Get yours at LoneStarSmokeout.com today. Can we do the sleeper leaderboard quickly? Oh, yeah, for sure, yeah.
Okay, so we got to show the sleeper leaderboard as well. A bit of a bye week for me. I didn't really do too much on sleeper. Jeff Wilson absolutely kept cranking him out, and he's
running away with it.
He still has a pretty big lead over me and Jeff Kavanaugh. Sam is starting to close the gap on me too, so I got to make sure I don't fall to last place by next week. Otherwise, I'm never going to be able to show my face in public again, except for 5 days a week live on YouTube. But I'm trying. I'm trying, KG. I'm trying to do it for the show.
You got some NBA playoff games you might need to start making some plays with when it comes to sleeper.
It's time to turn it up.
It is time. As we continue our season autopsy of the Dallas Mavericks 2024-25 season. Really appreciate all of you joining us here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. Today, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to DLLS Sports and find our podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. As we've gone through the first couple portions of the season, the beginning portion of the year where the Mavericks climbed themselves to 4th in the West at 19-10, cooking, finding themselves as one of the best teams in the NBA. And then, of course, we go what was from Christmas Day all the way up to January 31st, where they get blown out by the Detroit Pistons. And we're thinking, okay, not great coming off of that loss, but still got a chance to turn it around. Reports coming that Luka Doncic could be making his return soon from that calf injury, as he had been out since Christmas Day after injuring that during the first half against Minnesota. And we're thinking, okay, once Luka gets back, he can start to turn things around. And then all of a sudden, things change. February 1st, Saturday night at 11:12 p.m. Central Standard Time, where the most shocking trade in the history of the association takes place, as the Dallas Mavericks send Luka Doncic, Markieff Morris, and Maxi Kleber to the Los Angeles Lakers in exchange for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a future first-round pick. Not to be forgotten, Jalen Hood-Schifino goes to the Utah Jazz, and the Mavericks sent a second-round pick to Utah as part of that deal as well. And in a trade, gentlemen, that sent shockwaves not only through the NBA but through the entire sports world. As we know, we were up till the wee hours of the morning doing an emergency podcast were the unthinkable words of Luka Doncic being traded from the Dallas Mavericks consumed all of us. And honestly, it has not been the same since that day.
Yeah. I mean, the timing of it was just like you win 14 out of 17 with him. He gets hurt. You lose a lot of games without him. And you're like, well, I guess it's time to get rid of him. Like, I want to, I'm not going to get too far down the rabbit hole here, but the previous night, the last game the Mavs played before making the trade in Detroit, Dinwiddie, Grimes, Exum, and Hardy, those 4 players, the Mavs guards outside of Kyrie, combined to play 54 minutes. They combined to score 8 points. They combined to dish out 5 assists. They combined to commit 5 turnovers. So the decision was made by the general manager to look at that production from the guard spot and be like, you know what? That's all. I'm good with that. That's awesome. I love that. I'm confident in these guys the rest of the way, except for Grimes. I'll trade him later too.
Right.
But I'm confident that 8 and 5 from the guard spot from my playmakers is worth doing this. Like, just pure basketball. We don't need to rehash the whole trade. We've done that a million times. I'm so tired of talking about Nico Harrison and Luka Doncic, I promise. But a basketball decision was made that I can never justify that ever in my life.
Defense wins championships. That was the rationale that Nico Harrison gave in the immediate aftermath of the trade that sent this team into what is one of the more difficult periods that we've seen in quite some time. Anthony Davis comes to the Dallas Mavericks amid fire Nico chants and Luka Doncic protests. Anthony Davis makes his debut on February the 8th against the Houston Rockets and puts together one of the most dominant first halves that you will ever see from a big man, particularly in a Mavericks uniform, where we're thinking, oh my gosh, this is the guy that the Mavericks traded for, a guy who's a top 75 player all time in terms of the anniversary team, an NBA championship winner, a 10-time All-Star, all the things that Anthony Davis is one of the best two-way players of the game. The Mavericks then lose Anthony Davis in that same game to an adductor strain, where we thought, after what he said post-game, was that he would be fine. We come to find out he would miss the next 6 weeks with that said injury, setting off what would be just a calamity of injuries for this team. We talked about the Derek Lively injury that he had on January the 22nd. Anthony Davis suffering the adductor strain on February the 8th. Daniel Gafford then suffers what will be a grade 3 MCL sprain on February the 13th. And then just a few short weeks later, Kyrie Irving tears his ACL on March 3rd against the Sacramento Kings. And in between that time and obviously getting to Kyrie Irving's injury, this Mavericks team took on a completely different shape that obviously culminated in the most devastating injury post-Luka trade in terms of Kyrie Irving suffering that torn ACL there.
Yeah, and there was concern even without the Luka trade. Once Kyrie had his back injury, there was concerns that what if that flared back up again? And Kyrie had to miss more time because we knew Derek Lively was possibly missing until the very end of the season, which ended up being the case. And if Derek Lively wasn't available for the postseason, there was really no chance. I mean, even looking back, he was playing super limited minutes, obviously, as we know looking back. Maybe if Luka was still on the team, it's impossible to say for sure what would have happened with Kyrie. Certainly he would have been playing more minutes. Maybe he gets through that stretch. Maybe both of them are healthy going into the postseason. Maybe Daniel Gafford is out there, and maybe you can survive Derek Lively. Maybe we would be talking right now about, okay, Derek Lively, his minutes load is going to get up to like 25 minutes for an upcoming game 3 or something like that against, I don't know, choose whichever first round. That would have been really tough. That still would have been very difficult. It would have been very difficult for the team's third best player to enter the season or enter the postseason not fully healthy. So there were definitely doom scenarios even before the trade, but oh my God, there was not this doom scenario. This is the one that came true.
And it sucks because, like, kind of as all that stuff was going on, like, they go to Boston, they beat Boston the night of our Cosm watch party.
Mm-hmm.
Warriors come in, Mavs beat them after the Jimmy Butler trade. And it's like, oh my God, Brandon Williams was matching Steph point for point for most of that game. They beat the Heat right before the break. They come out, they beat the Pelicans. They win 5 out of 6, and that's without AD for a lot of it, and that's without Lively for any of it. And we're like, okay, I mean, none of us like this, but we can at least maybe see the we can see potentially the vision, and like if they can get healthy, then maybe like it's possible. And then just the bottom fell out just like right after that.
Well, they lose 5 straight games beginning with the Milwaukee Bucks. So they lose 132 to 117. That set off consecutive losses against Milwaukee, Sacramento, Milwaukee again, Memphis, and then the game against Phoenix, where I'll never forget my thoughts coming out of that game where the Mavericks lost to the Phoenix Suns. I was thoroughly unimpressed with the Phoenix Suns. I thought they completely went through the motions, but still found a way to win that game 125 to 116. And that's where the Mavericks, for the first time since that 4-game losing streak that dropped into 5-7, that they found themselves under 500 at 32 and 33. And this is almost midway through March. And you're thinking, how in the world are they going to get this turned around given the injury situation that they were dealing with?
They ain't.
And we came to find out, obviously, they were not able to. They win on the road against San Antonio on March 10th, and they lose in that baseball series finale on the 12th of March. It set off another 4-game losing streak where they lost to the Spurs, the Rockets, the Philadelphia 76ers, and probably the worst loss of the season, Brooklyn. And then they lose against the Indiana Pacers in what was a competitive game, but they lost that game on the road. And then all of a sudden you're getting to the end of March, and they're now trying to just fight and claw for a play-in spot given their situation at that particular point. And we're thinking, can any of these 3 big men, Lively, Davis, or Gaffer, come back healthy before the end of the year? Because I remember saying that I don't think we would see any of the injured big men by the time we got to the end of the regular season. But then they beat Detroit on the 21st, and then Anthony Davis makes his return on March the 24th in a road game against the Brooklyn Nets where they win 120 to 101. What was your guys' thoughts at that particular point, knowing that maybe we wouldn't see Davis for the rest of the season, but he finds his way back and they are able to get a win against Brooklyn? Did that change your feeling about the trajectory of where the season was going to go given where they were at that time?
Can I point out one thing super quickly? I'm looking at Basketball References game log of the season, and it lists the attendance for every game. The April 2nd game against the Atlanta Hawks has no listed attendance, which I can only assume means it was played in front of fans. And I feel like we really glossed over that happening when it did. I totally missed it.
Yeah.
So actually,
it was a home
game.
stage.
It was a home game. It was a home game against the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah.
So I don't remember everything getting so bad that they played without fans, but they must have, according to Basketball Reference. When Anthony Davis came back, I don't know. I don't know, man. It just they could have maybe had probably no more than 5% better chance if they just like lost out. They didn't win enough games, even with Anthony Davis on the court, to make any material change to what ended up happening this season in either direction. If Anthony Davis had come back, I still don't know if the Phoenix Suns were good enough to top the to pass them. And so for him to be out there, I think, I mean, there's a ton of reasons why. But did he ultimately change anything about the team's draft probabilities? Barely. About what happened to end the season? Barely. I mean, they won one playoff game. To the fan sentiment for the trade itself and their relationship to the Dallas Mavericks? No. To his status as a NBA 75 player, which is very important to him, as it should be. If you earned that title, that should be important to you. But did it change anything about that? I would say no. Did it change anything about the fact that he has an injury reputation, fair or not? Even though he's been healthy for the past few seasons, he has all these nicknames, about being injury prone. Did it change that? No, not when you limp off the court in the very final game of the season. Did it change anything? With the Mavs season and everything around it, all the reputations, all of the understandings of what these players, what he is, what Dallas is, what their future is, would it have changed anything if Anthony Davis hadn't come back? And that's basically my take. He came back and he played, and it was cool to see him play a few times, and nothing changed.
Yeah, I mean, the only benefit from it is seeing, to a degree, some level of proof of concept of what the plan was. You get to see down later, once Gafford and Lively come back, you get to see them play together, and you see why it could be good. You also see why it could be really, really bad, and why it could be, just something that you can't do against some teams, certain matchups. And we did agree that it is important for them to see that on the floor. Like you got to see the good, the great, the bad, the horrible, to have some level of idea of what to do. But what we did not know at the time is that on the other side of the season, the GM would see all of those things, see all of those warning signs, and say, "Yeah, that's good. Actually, that's what I wanted. That's what we're going to continue doing."
2.5 quarters of the Rockets game.
And we're with limited means to improve upon that. And so now we arrive at this point where, sure, he's back, but like they're still bad. They were a bad team.
That's where things end for the Mavericks as far as their season was concerned. They, of course, go on to make the play-in. They beat the brakes off the Sacramento Kings, but then lose to the Memphis Grizzlies as their season came to an end. And now questions abound about this team and its future going into next year. Coming up on the other side of the break, what happens if the Mavericks actually do relieve Nico Harrison of his duties and what that means for this franchise? We'll discuss that coming up next on the DLLS Mavs podcast.
But first, it has never, ever, ever been a better time to become a diehard. Support what we're doing here at DLLS Sports. We got all weekend long draft coverage. We're covering every single pick. We did it last night. We're doing it tonight again for rounds 2 and 3, and then we'll be back tomorrow afternoon to wrap up everything the Cowboys did on day 3 of the draft as well. Right after that will be a Dallas Stars watch along. How about that for Game 4 between the Stars and the Avs? I cannot wait for that one. We had Rangers doing post-game show last night in the wee hours of the night. We're here today. We got mini pods coming out tomorrow. What a busy weekend for us here on YouTube. But if you want to be a part of our growing community, scan the QR code right here or click the link in the description below or go to alldls.com/diehard, where for just $36 a year, which averages out to $3 a month, you can join the mighty ranks of the diehards. You get a free shirt right when you sign up, which pays for almost the entire cost of the whole deal. You get a discount on any other merch that you might want to grab, any gear. We got shirts, hoodies, cups, mugs, flags, all sorts of stuff. You also get a discount on any live events we got coming down the pipeline. You get to join the DLS Diehard Discord Lounge. It's a great place to hang out with fellow diehards. You get to read the entire website, all the written stuff from Tim Cato on the Mavs beat, Clarence Hill and Joe Hoyt, bringing you a ton of goodies about the Cowboys and their draft, Jeff Wilson on the Rangers, and then Sam Nestler and Sean Shapiro covering this Dallas Stars playoff run, maybe improbably up 2-1 with Miro on the verge of return, maybe about to beat these Avs here in the next few days. Who knows?
I like what you did. That was good.
And you get your physical diehard card. Kevin
Boom!
Gray, I can't believe you're able to hold that up with just one hand. That thing weighs 73.2 pounds.
The boy is strong.
Let's go. So many benefits coming your way for becoming a diehard. Thank you to every single one of you who've already signed up. Thanks for supporting us in the chat here on YouTube, subbing to the channel and all that stuff. It's just a great ride, and we're happy to keep it going here.
Appreciate all of you joining us here on the DLLS Mavs podcast here on this Friday. Let's finish up our show today. What will happen, what could happen if the Dallas Mavericks decide to relieve Nico Harrison of his duties? The embattled GM, who, of course, oversaw the trade, the most controversial trade in the history of the NBA, moving on from Luka Doncic and acquiring Anthony Davis in exchange, saw his team finish 39-43 on the year, winning a play-in game but losing to the Memphis Grizzlies to miss out on the playoffs for the second time in 3 seasons. So let's get into it, gentlemen. What would happen, what could happen if the Mavericks actually decide to relieve Nico Harrison of his duties?
Well, I think it's most important to start not on the basketball court, not with the roster. Because if that were to happen, if Patrick Dumont got to the point that he decided this is not manageable, Nico Harrison has to be fired, the chants have to be listened to. That only makes sense if you, Patrick Dumont, are immediately, expressing, apologizing and expressing, a level of attrition or contrition. Important difference. Contrition that this happened, that Luka isn't here. It would be, a serious level of apology and saying, I am wrong. We were wrong. I was wrong to let this happen. I didn't know. And it would be a slow, painful process to try to win back huge percentages of this fan base who feel hurt and frustrated and betrayed by every action, not every action, the action, and then all the subsequent actions of Luka no longer being a Dallas Maverick. And I think that's far and away the main reason that you would move on from Nico Harrison, is because you have a fan base that is questioning whether they're going to be your fan base. And many have already made that decision. And that's a situation that not many franchises, not many teams, sports teams, have ever been in. Like, this has gotten to a point that it is beyond most examples. Even teams that relocate, at least they leave that fan base behind, that scorned fan base. Those people experience similar levels of anger and pain and emotion, but the team itself at least gets itself out of that situation, or not gets itself, but moves and isn't directly, proximity, it's not next to the situation. So that would be the reason. That would be the main reason. It would be an admission that all of the talking points that the fans will be won back over if the team starts winning again, that isn't enough. And so that's where everything would start. And hopefully along that way, you get Dirk Nowitzki back supportive and involved, if he chooses to be. Which, if it gets to that point, maybe he would need some time after everything. Obviously, his relationship with the Mavericks is not great right now, or perhaps non-existent. So these are at least the first steps you would take. Then you would have to worry about, how do you address this basketball team that likely isn't staying together, that likely the stars may reconsider whether they want to be here. And you have to figure out, how do you tear that all down?
Yeah, I mean, and you got to figure that out quickly, because their financial situation is tenuous at best, flirting with the first apron. And if, depending on what number Kyrie re-signs at, and depending on whether you want to extend PJ and Gafford, you're already up against the second apron like very soon, as early as the season after. That is not a position you want to be in whenever you don't have any picks to speak of, and whenever you have an aging roster. So if they do decide to move on, you probably have to make some level of commitment to the GM that you're replacing him with, that I expect this to be a pretty long and painful process. I'm going to give you a long leash. And the only kind of GM that is going to sign up for that sort of job, where you have to break down, you have to suck for a while, you have to recoup picks and build this thing slowly through the draft over a period of time, is a very young GM.
Somebody you've never heard of.
Yeah, where it's his first or second job, maybe even first job. And that is, I think, I don't know how likely a scenario that is, considering the owner of this team has very limited basketball knowledge, and his general knowledge of the league probably has all come from the guy that is currently holding that post, who would never want to take that route. Nico would never want to rebuild. And so that would represent a complete philosophical departure from, what position Patrick Dumont has taken and what position the Mavs have taken. But, that's probably the correct thing to do, honestly. And if you do make that change, the incoming GM is probably going to want to get all of the guys that Nico acquired out of here, because they're all sort of symbols and avatars of what Nico did. Would the new GM come in and be like, let's build around Anthony Davis? Do you want the fans to yell fire your name too? There's going to be this pressure, and that it's an unfair position for that person to be in. But I mean, them's the breaks. There's only 30 GM jobs if you want one. They're not all rosy,
Yeah.
and you could come in and fix this thing and become a hero if you do.
Yeah. And there's a decent chance that Anthony Davis wouldn't want to be here. That I do think that Nico is a strong element that is. You
can't make that choice with those players in mind. Who cares?
Yeah,
this is about your franchise. This is about Anthony Davis.
What's really tricky? Right? To me, the most compelling reason to move on from Nico Harrison is what I laid out in front. No franchise has ever been this at odds with their own fan base, I don't think, or at least you have to go a long ways back. And I think that's just antithetical to the entire concept and meaning of sports. However, if you bring in a new GM and you have to tear down, you are trying to do it as fast as possible, because you only have your own pick for the coming season. You have it this season, this offseason, this summer, and you have your 2026 first-round pick. The problem with that is that everybody around the league knows you're operating on the same timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So not only do you have to work with the teams that want Anthony Davis this summer, which I am certain there would be. He's an amazing player. But the options for a 32-year-old center with injury health who is making a ton of money, it might not be as many places as you would like. And it doesn't matter because you just got to deal it to whichever team is going to give you the most back in return.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you go into next season knowing that you only have one first-round pick, you got to offload them. You've got to get rid of the players who can help you win games because you're only going to have one chance at this. One chance. You can probably keep Najee Marshall around and trade him midseason. Same goes for Caleb Martin, who probably doesn't have much value right now. Maybe there's somebody willing to give you a second-round pick because of all the benefits about his salary and his past experience. They assume he can get back to that level. PJ Washington, that's a pretty valuable player. Although he's got a looming extension that some other team is going to have to worry about. Still think he's really valuable. Still think that players would be interested. Kyrie Irving, do you bring him back to let him rehab? What does he do? Really hard to know. Really hard to say. It does get very difficult. It gets really difficult. And the number of first-round picks you're going to get back, even if you trade all of the veterans on this team, I don't think it's going to be as many as you might think. 2 or 3 or 4 at most, I would guess, just based off the timeline that you're working with, the age of these players, the amount of money that is on a lot of their contracts, and how difficult it is to fit veteran players into teams. There's only, there's only so many veteran teams that are going to lose and say, we need more, and we've got to go make a big trade. And we also have the salary to match Anthony Davis, to match $20 million for Klay Thompson.
But the return doesn't even matter because
it doesn't even matter.
The reason that you're doing this is to turn the page. It doesn't matter.
100%.
You could trade them for air. Like this is a symbolic. I mean, or this would be a literal flush it all.
And again, when I try to put myself in Patrick Dumont's mindset, I at least understand that if this rebuild isn't going to work now, and it's going to be awfully awful later, just from a basketball perspective, it almost makes sense just to run this team back, just to see if there's any chance to have some joy. The problem is that because of the circumstances, because of what Nico now represents, because of what you, Patrick Dumont, now represents to the fan base, there isn't going to be any joy. That any success is only going to be met with the same apathy, with the same sadness that is just roundly frustrating and roundly killing what used to be a very fervent fan base in Dallas itself.
And that's honestly why they would need to sever ties now, because the daily embarrassment as we get deeper into the summer, deeper into the fall, and when these regular season games begin, we thought it reached a fever pitch when Luka Doncic made his return against the Dallas Mavericks, when he returned against the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Fire and Nico chants became what they were. You cannot have that going into the beginning of the season because Nico Harrison, unfortunately, has made himself the story of this team. He is now the franchise's face.
You can have it. You can make that choice. It's just going to continue to damage what little, I don't want to say little, but what very frayed relationship exists between this many fans and this. You can make that choice. You can absolutely make that choice, but it comes at expense of the people who care about this team, who care about this product, who care about these relationships. Is that the choice you want to make? That is ultimately the choice that Patrick Dumont is facing.
That is the choice that Mavericks will have to face this summer when it comes to deciding the fate of Nico Harrison and whether or not they decide to keep him or relieve him of his duties as general manager. As we finish up our show today, shout out to Ardell with the $5.31 super chat. Nico traded my Shady Rays to the Lakers for a busted pair of 7-Eleven sunglasses.
Shady Rays will replace your lost shades, Ardell. I don't think anything can replace Luka.
Touche.
Unless Max Christie becomes a superstar. I still believe.
We're hanging on. But that is kind of the season in its recap when it comes to the Dallas Mavericks. And now a long summer awaits this team, beginning with the draft lottery, the NBA draft in and of itself, and what it looks like toward free agency. The biggest news, I'm sure, at some point will come what Kyrie Irving decides to do with his contract, because he's got a player option going into this upcoming summer. By the way, he was seen at the Clippers Nuggets game last night. in Los Angeles for the
Maybe he can go be a Clipper. I'm just ready for this team to be done, man. I'm over it.
Oh, wow. Okay, we might have to discuss that more next week here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. That'll do it for us, though, on this Friday afternoon here on DLLS Sports. Appreciate it, guy Tanner, making us look good and sound good as always. Appreciate you, sir. That is our Mavericks analyst, Bobby Carell. That is our Mavericks beat writer, Tim Cato. I'm your host, Kevin Gray. We are DLLS Mavs. Y'all have a good weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday at 12 p.m. right here on DLLS Sports. Y'all be good and have a good weekend. We'll talk to you later. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.